So, good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Wolfert. I'm president of HLAA Westchester, and we welcome you to our monthly chapter meeting. A couple of brief instructions to those of you who may not be familiar with Zoom. Tonight's meeting is captioned. If you have not already done so, you may turn on the captioning by moving your mouse to the CC button at the bottom of the screen and then click Turn Subtitles On. Please mute your microphones now to avoid having everyone hear any background noises. You may turn your microphone back on during the Q&A period and socializing time at the end of the presentation. If you have a question for our speaker, please raise your hand to be recognized and announce your name. If you prefer to write a question or comment, you can use the chat function, which can be found by hovering over and clicking the chat button at the bottom of the screen. Type your message into the box, then press enter. Thank you again for joining us tonight, whether you're a member of the Westchester chapter, a guest, or a member of another chapter around the country. I think you'll enjoy tonight's meeting and our special presentation on oral rehabilitation for children and adults. Now some background on our special guest. Michelle Albera is a speech language pathologist at Westchester Medical Center and the Westchester Institute for Human Development, and is part of the renowned surgical, audiology, and auditory therapy team Westchester Medical Center, a major resource for speech and hearing in the Hudson Valley region. She is a clinical educator for graduate students in the clinic and the hospital. Michelle provides auditory therapy for both children and adults with hearing loss. Michelle received her MS degree in Communication Sciences and Disorders from Emerson College and her BA in Speech and Hearing Science from George Washington University. So please join me in welcoming Michelle Albera to HLAA Westchester.
Hi, everybody. So nice to be here. I'm really looking forward to presenting and talking with you all. Could you raise your hand and just tell me how many of you are hearing aid users?
What do you mean? What do you want to know?
And how many?
I have a regular hearing aid in my left ear and a cochlear implant on my right.
Okay. And how many people are cochlear implant users? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen and I'll be presenting from my slides throughout, but definitely feel free to stop me and ask any questions. Oops. So just a little bit about me. Thank you, Steve already shared, but I work at Westchester Medical Center. I work with audiologists and our surgeon, and we all work together in a very closely knit unit. I have been working towards my auditory verbal therapy certification for the past 4 years, and it's been very challenging, but I'm finally finished with my mentorship, and I just have to take a very big exam and I will be complete. I work with both children and adults, and I am a native New Yorker. I grew up in Queens, and in my sessions, some of my favorite activities are making people listen to funny stories about my son. And I also love reading to people from National Geographic. So people end up learning weird facts from me as well. So I wanted to start just with what is oral rehabilitation and just how it is comprised of so many different pieces. Adjusting to hearing loss, using your hearing aids to or cochlear implants, your hearing technology to the best way that you can to maximize what you're getting. Using assistive devices and like remote microphones or TV streamers. So those are all things that we do in oral rehab. For children, it's a little different. And that's, we work with the child and the family and coach the parents to teach the families how to use listening and spoken language strategies. And here's some myths. I wanted to start with some myths about oral rehabilitation, why some people are so reluctant. I'm doing fine, I don't need therapy. I don't have time to practice. I always say you just need to do 15 minutes. I can't do hearing therapy practice at home because I live alone. It's too hard and I don't know where to start. And I've had a hearing aids or a cochlear implant for years. This is not for me. So there's always more to do and more to practice and grow. So who benefits from it? Usually, of course, we have newly diagnosed infants and children, individuals who have been hearing impaired since birth. I also work with a lot of late deafened adults who had a sudden hearing loss or even progressive hearing loss. We're now seeing many people who have unilateral hearing loss, and also people getting a second cochlear implant have to sort of start from the beginning. So some of the things that we really target during these sessions are all the research has shown that the oral rehab can improve these areas. And so such as using those accessories, working on articulation. If your hearing is better, you may be able to work on getting better speech production, detecting environmental sounds, music appreciation. That can be very different when you transition from a hearing aid to a cochlear implant. Speech recognition and talking on the telephone. And all of these things require practice. So you could ask, can I just do this myself? But I would probably say that you can, but you wouldn't really be taking full advantage of working with a professional who can really guide you in the right direction and making sure that you're making the most of your time. I like to show the line to sort of think about where you stand in terms of wanting to improve your hearing. And that's what I always ask new patients. How important is it for you to improve your hearing right now? And so depending on where you fall on the line, is sort of how can we guide you to either wanting to make more improvement or maybe making you feel more confident in your ability to use your hearing technology. So I bet many of you could think about where you stand right now. So where do we start? When we start with oral rehabilitation, we always think about listening developmentally. So everything we do is on a hierarchy of listening. And so with adults or children, we would start at the very beginning and train your brain to hear the new sound, and work our way up to more advanced levels of listening. And basically, we're creating new pathways in the brain to the brain for your auditory skills. At Westchester Medical Center, before a patient receives a cochlear implant, our surgeon and audiology team tries to make it very clear that our expectation is for every patient to participate in oral rehabilitation sessions. So even if you're an adult, you would attend at least one session with me. And sometimes people are like, whoa, this is great. And initially people are, I think, reluctant and think, why do I need to see a speech therapist? And so I quickly reassure them that we're working on listening and retraining your brain. At our hospital, the goal is for pediatric patients to receive a cochlear implant from 6 to 9 months. But listening and spoken language therapy can begin even earlier than that. Families learn the strategies and then make it a part of their lifestyle. So they're using strategies while they're changing diapers or cooking dinner. And myself and our audiologists as well, work with the community and the early intervention providers of all the children that we work with. And our expectation for children is that they will develop age-appropriate language and literacy skills. So we're working on, from the very beginning, their developmental language. During our first session, it's usually an evaluation to find out where you are. What are your listening skills, and then determine goals based on that. And then we would discuss what your goals are. What are you looking to achieve in oral rehab? And then in our center, we provide in-person and video therapy. So that's been really, it's been more recent actually, since that was one of the silver linings of COVID, because insurance companies started to pay for telehealth. And so we've been able to reach so many people that wouldn't have been able to come in for weekly sessions because they live so far away, or it's just a burden in terms of driving or having family members drive them. So, so video therapy has been really successful for us. I wanted to go through just a quick sample of what auditory therapy looks like. I don't know how many of you have had oral rehab or have done auditory therapy with your hearing technology. So typically we start at the very beginning, and you would practice listening for the difference between a loud or a quiet sound, or words that are different number of syllables, like cat versus watermelon, or a phrase like stop versus I'd like to go outside. And that would be the very beginning. And then the next phase would be trying to hear the smaller differences, like cat versus pat, and hit versus hip. And with practice and the right amplification, we work towards getting you to hear these differences. And then as your skills get stronger and stronger, we work on things like following along to a paragraph or listening for items in a category. So for example, I could say, I'm gonna tell you 15 fruits. And you would just have to listen with your amplification and try to name all the fruits that I'm saying. So it could be any fruit on earth, but you know the topic. And repeating sentences about pictures. That's where my National Geographic comes in, because I often show beautiful pictures and then tell people about them and try to keep things interesting. And then we take away context, and this starts to get more difficult because I may have someone repeat a 10-word sentence verbatim based on what I said, or repeat sentences from a paragraph. And then for more advanced listeners, we work on listening for a whole paragraph and summarizing it, or listening in noise, or even understanding sentences on the phone or through a speaker. Many people, one of their biggest complaints is listening in noise. And so we practice listening in noise. Sometimes I walk downstairs to the food area, which is so noisy, and we practice having a conversation or practice using remote microphones in those settings because it's more realistic. And then all those things that we did, we do over again, but change the difficulty level. So maybe we would, like I said, we would add noise. I can tell you a story, but move across the room and still expect you to hear what I'm saying. I could take away all context and also, well, now I'm wearing a mask in most of my therapy sessions, so you also can't read my lips. That's one of the benefits of Zoom, actually. We don't have to do that. Increasing the number of choices. So maybe I wouldn't give you any choices and you would just have to listen for words. Making the choices very close together, like shoe versus watermelon, or making that harder would be like cat versus pat. And then, like I said too, more informal tasks are often harder. So if I'm walking down the hallway with you and we're talking about what I did last weekend, you really don't have any context because you have no idea what I did or who I did it with. But it's good practice for real life situations. And then talking about strategies to repair the communication breakdowns in those situations. I wrote some strategies that we use a lot in therapy, and that's acoustic highlighting, which is like using clear speech. So pausing, changing your pitch of your voice. Sometimes whispering helps to make those consonants louder. Using repetition and wait time, especially with little kids. An auditory sandwich is one of my favorite ones, where we present something through listening, and then if you didn't understand it, how could I help you to understand it with visuals? And then always put it back into auditory. And of course, positioning, where you're seated in a room or who you're seated next to is very important to make sure that you're able to hear well. I think one of the things that is really special about where I work is that our whole team works so closely together. And so I'm constantly talking about people that I see, patients that I see, and I'll go right next door to the audiologist and I'll say, I think so-and-so is having trouble hearing these sounds. Is there anything you could do during your next appointment? So the audiologist and vice versa, the audiologist might come to me and say, I just made some big changes on so-and-so's program. So I really would love your input after you see them the next time. And so I think it's really important for your providers to communicate with each other, and just know that your skills are always being assessed. And if things need to be made better, how can you get that open communication? We recently started doing some oral rehabilitation groups. I'm not sure if any of you have ever done those or found them beneficial. I think many people are reluctant, but we found that for both children and adults, people really enjoyed it. We had to sort of force people to join our last one, but everybody was happy after they did it. So that was a really positive. And I recommend that if you ever have the opportunity to do a group like that, it was amazing for me too. I feel that the people really got to share tips with each other, and it was coming from other people with hearing loss, probably similar to this group that you are all in right now. There's some things that people said to us after they finished our group. Just meeting people who had hearing problems and learning how they cope with the problems was beneficial. And a lot of people really talked about noise and how hard it is to interact in a group and in noisy situations. And we all did a lot of brainstorming together to try to think of ways to make those situations better. And of course, I'm a big advocate of using your remote microphone. I'm not sure how many of you already use remote microphones, but they're such a helpful tool, especially in noisy situations. And people don't even think to use them in places like the grocery store, if you're shopping with your
Hearing.
if you're shopping with another person and there's so much background noise, or going out to a restaurant, the museum, meetings, and in the car has been, I feel a lot of people find it helpful in the car when they're driving with another person. Do many of you use remote microphones? Sometimes. So I made a list of some apps that I often work on with patients, and they're helpful for home practice. Usually we work together with a patient to sort of figure out which ones are the best to get started with, because it's not possible to just download all these apps, and I think it gets overwhelming sometimes, but some of these are good, and I picked a few to sort of go over. I'm sure many of you have heard of some of these. Do many of you know these apps already, or does this seem relatively new to you? Okay. Oops, I'm stuck. And these are websites too. And I can actually, or some of you are taking screenshots. And I'll go over a few of these, just showing them. So this is the Word Success app. And this is, this app works on listening for the differences between words. And so somehow it doesn't show up so well here, but there's a hierarchy. Here's level 1 all the way to level 9. And it's getting harder in terms of the contrast between the words. So for example, level 1 would be shoe versus watermelon, and level 9 will be tap versus tack. So and you can work your way through this, and it's a good way to practice on your own. I'll show you on the next page. This is an example of what the screen looks like. And up at the top, it says that this is level 8. And it gives you your score for how many you've gotten right. And you could do it by yourself. The voice will say the word, and then you click on the word that you heard. I tried to point out some of the ones that people don't know about as much, but I love this one. It's called Many Things. And this is actually an app for English language learners. But what's cool about it is that you can pick any topic. I picked Wonders of the USA, but they give you, oh my gosh, hundreds of different topics, and you choose one. And then when you press play, there's a person reading aloud the words in front of you, so you can follow along. And depending on where you are, you can slow down the speed. So you can listen to it at 100%, or you could slow it down to 75. And so that might help you to follow along.
Michelle, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Are these apps on a cell phone, or are they apps that can be on a desktop?
So I broke them up. Wait, let me go back. Oops, sorry. Wait, I don't want to go that way. Okay. I broke them up into two different screens. So these are apps that are on either a cell phone or a tablet.
Yeah.
Where you would download the app.
The reason I ask, I have eye problems too. So I'd rather have a big screen on a desktop than trying to do something on my cell phone.
Yes. I also see someone who has a visual impairment as well. And one of the things that we work on is using Alexa. I don't know if you know about Alexa.
Alexa is a voice.
Yes, Alexa.
You can't hear her. What good is Alexa?
Well, she I know. But there's actually things you could do on Alexa, and some things might have more context than others. And she talks to you.
Advocate, that's all.
Yeah, no, I understand. Listen, that's a very high level listening skill, but there's definitely things you could do on Alexa. I'd be happy to talk to you more about that. Like you could there's games like 20 questions on Alexa. And so you would know that she's asking you a question, so you give yourself some context. Some of the apps are pretty difficult to see with depending on the font and the color of the screen. I know that the one that I just showed is really not ideal
Yeah,
because
I've-
there's like,
I've used word success.
oh, good.
It's good, but I've gotten through everything, I think.
Hmm.
It's a repetition now.
Hmm. So it's too easy for you. And maybe,
It's not too easy. There's some exercises that are fairly easy and others are much more difficult.
I always say you need try to get 80% on all of the squares, and then do it again in noise. So on the bottom of the sound success, wait, sorry, I keep going back and forth, but on this side, I don't know if my screen, sorry guys, I'm going crazy now. Okay, on the bottom of this screen, you can see that you can do all of the exercises again, and you can add background noise.
Right.
And just to go back to my list, oops, it keeps going the wrong way.
That's true.
Sorry, trying to get back here. There's also for patients who have cochlear implants, there's something called the Copilot, and that's relatively new. And that's just home practice, and it you would get it as an app on your phone, and it streams to your cochlear implant, and it gives you a little quiz at the beginning, and then it puts you in the right spot for where you need to be practicing. And then Speech ID is another game. This one you have to pay for, but it also gives you a quiz and makes you practice words, hearing the difference between words. This one's more for younger kids, but it also is free, and it has some nice contrasts between difficult to hear sounds like maybe S versus F. Here Coach is a great one for people who are graduating from word success, because this one starts to it adds noise pretty quickly, and some really challenging listening tasks. Speech Banana and Spice for Life have a lot more practice activities where you just click something and it's letting you listen to the difference between things. And Bring Back the Beat is also a cochlear app, and that one is practicing music as well. And Otter, I don't know if all of you know about this one, but it's a speech dictation app. So you would download Otter on your phone, and then if you were in a situation where someone was talking and you couldn't understand them, either because of background noise or because of their face being covered, you can put the Otter app on, and as they speak, it writes out what they're saying. People also use Apple Notes for that as well. And then these, I won't go through all of these websites, but I showed you many things. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with TED Talks, but those are also really great for listening to a speaker. Sometimes the speaker has an accent. Sometimes the speaker is looking directly at you, but other times they're walking around. When you do this on your computer, you can read a full transcript. And sometimes I think if that's too easy, just following a transcript, it's good to look at the transcript first, just skim it, and then listen to the speaker. And I don't know how many of you listen to music. Do many of you listen to music? Yes. Okay. Okay. So
I listen to music, but I never know the words to the song. I never have all my life.
yeah. So I always recommend going, because now on YouTube, it's so easy to hear any song that you want to hear and have the lyrics playing in front of you. So you're able to listen to the song and then follow along to the words. And I always say also think about what instruments you could be hearing. There's also a website called AB Music Rehab. I don't know how well this will sound, but I can show you, I can play a little bit of this song and you can see how the lyrics stream across the screen.
When you're down and troubled and you need a helping hand, and nothing is going right. Close your eyes and think of me, and soon.
So you see how that works. And you can really do that with any song. So it's pretty cool. So that would just be on YouTube and searching songs with lyrics. And often folk music is a good place to start with listening to music, because the words, it's a clear story and not so many different instruments in the background. Oops, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that again. And that's it. These are a few pictures from our center. This is our team, and that's us being together at a conference. And that's me doing teletherapy in my office. And this is a program that I started to give, donate teletherapy boxes for our pediatric patients that were working from home, who didn't necessarily have all the toys that would have been beneficial for listening therapy. So that was, and that's it. That's the end of my slides.
Thank you,
Does anybody-
Michelle. If anyone has any questions, and I'm sure they do, again, please raise your hand. Don't forget to unmute your microphone and introduce yourself. One or two questions did come in on the chat function.
Okay.
The first one, someone asked, does health insurance cover auditory therapy services?
Yes, health insurance does cover auditory therapy. So our initial session is an evaluation, and based on the evaluation and the need for therapy, as well as a written out plan of care, typically therapy is approved.
Okay, I see Carolyn Tannen has a question. Carolyn?
Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Hi, good. How are
I
you?
don't know if you streamer.
I really don't have a question, but I have something that I would like to share. I got my cochlear implant in 2009 and had a revision in 2010. And to be honest, I just worried. And I mean, I did go to therapy because I had complications from my first implant. I had to get re-implanted and they caught it. But then 2010, I just pretty much wore the implant and didn't practice. I mean, I tried, but I have to
It's
share
not
this
on.
story. I got my Canto 2 last year, and I'm working from home, so I had the opportunity to use the TV streamer and the streaming from my iPad and my phone. And oh boy, I practice so much every day because while I'm working, I'm listening to my iPad, the new TV show, game shows. And you know how the TV streamer works. You can walk into another room and still listen to the program. And it's been the best thing that happened in this terrible 2 years that you say. But I benefit from that. And yesterday, I went to a restaurant and it was a little noisy. And of course, the server had a mask on. And, you know, I was able to hear him. And it was like a CI moment. And I was like, wow, it really helped my brain understand more fish. So I really had to share that. And I encourage everyone, I tell everyone all the time, use your streaming because it really, really helps. But the one thing I don't use often enough is the mic, the mini mic. I find it very cumbersome to have to plug it in and carry it with me. But I am going on an international trip in March, and I'm gonna be in a car with my traveling team, and they're gonna be in the front seat. So I'm gonna think of clipping it onto her so I can at least hear the tour guide and her talking. And I'll be in the back. I'm hoping that'll work. You know, I just wanted to share that. It's streaming and doing all that auditory streaming is the best.
Wow, that's amazing story. And what a serious way to practice.
Yeah, and with the math, it really made me feel a little more comfortable because I did all of that for the past 2 years.
What a great idea to try the mini mic out on your trip.
A couple
Yes,
people
I
have
am.
raised their electronic hand to be recognized. I'm not sure who's first, but Arlene, why don't you go? Arlene, turn your microphone on.
Hi, everybody. I want to say hello to a whole bunch of friends. I'm coming to you from New Jersey, and I have friends who used to live in New Jersey. Hi, Judy. Hi, Nancy. Who else do I see? Hi, Ann. She's a new friend. And this is just, and there's Karen sitting in Staten Island, right? Okay. So I'm not that far from Westchester. But I've never been to the chapter in person. I've almost gone, but I'm across the bridge. I am a long-term cochlear implant user. I got my first CI in 1997, and you may know I wrote 2 books about my experience with cochlear implants. The first one came out in 2000, and the second one came out in 2010 on the bilateral experience. And I mentioned them not to beat my chest or anything, but I know from feedback from audiologists that they tell me, Arlene, you don't know how many people you've helped. So just in that spirit, I just want to mention that I wrote 2 books that evidently have helped a lot of people. My own experience, and it's documented in the book, was in 1997 when I got my first implant. I got it from what was then the League for the Hard of Hearing to check on rehab. Okay, and they gave me some basic testing, and they said, you really would not benefit that much from rehab, but listen to audiobooks. And at that time, it was books on tape. Okay, and we've come a long way. Now I Bluetooth into my head, but I have been listening to audiobooks for 24 years because I know just from experience that you will continue to do things that you enjoy. And over the years, things that you don't enjoy so much will just go by the wayside. And so audiobooks are something I really do enjoy. I keep up with there's a side component that you become able to discuss things, which is very helpful if you have a hearing loss, that you're able to follow conversations because you know the authors or the subject matter. And right now, politics is a very big thing, or history. So that's my comment for you all, that I just finished, it was 30 hours on one book, right? Okay, and let me just tell you, and I'll give up this microphone. You know that people with hearing loss can go on for hours, but I was listening to an audio book. It's about the exhibit that's now in the Jewish Museum in Manhattan. It's called The Hair with Amber Eyes. It was about Nitsuki that traced a Jewish family's history from the 1880s through the Holocaust. And the person reading the book had a British accent. And the book itself had many, many, many foreign words in it. And so I actually listened to the book twice. And I said, this is not going to cut it because it was just too difficult to listen. I didn't know how those foreign words were supposed to be pronounced. So I bought the book. I didn't take it out of the library. I was very interested in this subject. And I listened to the book and I followed with the text. And for somebody who cannot listen to a book totally just by listening, you can follow the text as well. It's not that hard to get a text of a book. And that's the advice that has been around for 25 years, that it still works. I can't tell you how much it's helped me with, being able to hear better, but it can't hurt. And it is just a very pleasant way, because you pick out what's of interest to you to get that therapy. And we don't call it therapy. It's just an enhancement. It's allowing you to enjoy something you might not have ordinarily. So good luck to you all.
Ann Thomas in California, and Ann knows that I was a resident of Diablo Valley in Walnut Creek for many years. So please, thanks again for joining us. And you have a question.
Bill, how can we get a hold of you? I didn't see an email address on your presentation, or it's not on the chat. And by the way, thank you for an informative presentation.
Oh, you're so welcome. I guess I can type it in the chat.
Perfect.
I didn't put it. I guess I didn't put it in my slides, but I'll do that right now.
And while Michelle's doing that, Julie Olson has a question.
Okay,
Julie?
can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that I've been a cochlear implant user since 2005, and I'm bimodal. I'm using a hearing aid along with it. And they work so well together. It's just fascinating, even though I qualify I could have a second implant, but I hesitate to go there. But I wanted to share something that really made a difference for me. I was very fortunate to be involved nationally with HLAA, and I got to know Mark Ross quite well. And I think many of you may remember Mark. He was an outstanding audiologist. He was a member of the National HLAA board, and just a wonderful person. But he encouraged me before I got the implant. I was thinking about it for about 4 years before. He encouraged me to listen to audiobooks with a headset and with the telecoil neck loop, and using both of my hearing aids to do that. And he predicted that I would do very well with a cochlear implant if I did that. And I did. I followed his suggestion and spent a lot of time listening that way. And that was, 2005 was before the kind of computers we're using now. But it was just amazing to me because I had a 120 decibel loss, and they implanted the poorer ear, and they were both bad. And within 6 months of continuing after the surgery to listen to the audiobooks, I was hearing everything. It sounded just like it always had. So that practice is so important. And last but not least, I've got to say this because it really bothers me. I do not understand why the people who sell hearing aids don't do more of this kind of therapy with their patients. It's just it's a huge void, and it's really a shame. I don't know how you change that, but it's really a missing ingredient in the success for so many people.
Julie,
There's so many.
were you listening to the audio books with a headset all the time?
I was listening to them with my hearing aids and a neck loop that I plugged into.
With what?
I plugged it into the, what was I listening to? The tape recorder, whatever I was using. And that neck loop thing, there's just no question in my mind that hearing loops are so underused. They make such a difference because they bring that sound right to you without any background noise. And just plugging it into a portable radio is fantastic. I still do that.
Yeah.
Before we get to Mike in Houston, there's a question in the chat box that I'd like to get to, and it's a follow-up on the insurance question to you, Michelle. Do you know the CPT code for auditory therapy? And beyond that, what is the specialty that we need to seek when trying to find a provider in speech therapy? And based on what you've said, that it's taken you 4 years to complete specialized certification, it must be more advanced than just regular speech therapy.
Yeah. Well, first, the CPT code so as a speech pathologist working in oral rehab, we bill for a regular speech therapy session, and the CPT code is 92507. And in terms of speech therapy, specializing for people with hearing loss, so we're called listening and spoken language specialists, and this is a certification for people who really have specialized in learning to train your brain to listen, hear, and speak. Many cochlear implant centers have providers and speech pathologists who are either trained, certified, or in training, where you could find people to do that. Does that answer that question?
Michelle F. made the comment in the chat box, so I think Michelle's on the line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Glad I could answer that.
Okay, and now getting to Mike in Houston, you have a question?
I got my first cochlear implant in the mid-90s, and I got my second one only a couple of years ago. And I can tell you when I got my second one, I spent a lot more time doing oral rehabilitation, and I think I benefit a lot from it. But having said all of that, I still believe that our rehabilitation for adults is less well developed than it is for children. And in many ways, that kind of frustrates me. I just feel that there are no metrics out there to measure how you're improving. And that if I go along and I say to the people that are giving me the therapy, here are some of the things that I'm working for, I'd like to work on, but I don't seem to be getting enough exercise on. One of them could be my hearing stamina, my ability to hear beyond 30 minutes or so, a longer period of time. The other is like being able to hear and multitask at the same time. When I was working as an engineer, I often had to think on my feet. And being able to think and listen at the same time is very, very difficult for me. I can listen and I can repeat back the sentence, but if I'm also working through my own mind, exactly how am I going to reboot what somebody has said, that's really difficult for me. So I just like, given that you're working with both children and with adults, do you agree with me that there's a lot that really needs to be developed in terms of rehabilitation for adults?
I think it also will depend on the provider, you know, and like really being able to customize what you need to do. So it's one thing that, based on what you're saying too, is sometimes I'll have people draw a picture or be like copying something written from a book while I'm talking, and that forces practice and multitasking. So I think you're right, maybe, and in some ways that there's not this like rule book of things to do, especially once you get to those higher level listening tasks.
Thank you.
Michelle, I have a question for you. Carolyn touched on face masks. And we all know that face masks, while they might protect us against COVID-19, also impacts the understanding of speech. Our chapter were pioneers in that, thanks to Karen Rogers, we provided clear face masks to all our members. I understand the Westchester Center has done research on how much face masks actually degrade speech. Is there one type of face mask that is better than others? And is a person with hearing loss at a big disadvantage versus others? Could you go into a little more detail?
Yeah, we did a study where we put one of our audiologists who also has cochlear implants inside, and we tested out different types of masks. And the clear mask that we used is there's many different ones, but the one that we used is this big clear plastic shield. And so although you can read the person's lips much better, it does distort the sounds more because your speech is reverberating against the plastic. And so with surgical masks, you can't read lips, but the sound is being less distorted.
Okay.
I can actually share that. We have that in one of our newsletters, and maybe I can share that with you, that article. That would be something interesting. But I do think there's other clear masks out there that may not be, they have some fabric and some clear, so it might not be quite as thick.
Okay. Carolyn?
I'm jumped it up yet now. I only have an implant in one thigh, my right thigh. I would never was able to utilize the hearing aid since I was born in my left. I was considering maybe one day to get a second implant, but I know it's gonna be very difficult because it was never stimulated since I was born. I'm 57 years old, so it was never stimulated. And I know I'm gonna have to have that oral therapy again for the other side. I think I'm gonna wait till I retire. You know, so I have the time to work with it. But I don't know if it really worth getting the second one. You know, I'm still on the fence.
When you get the second one, you have to spend time taking off
Yeah.
the older one.
Yeah.
Karen Rogers.
I got the first implant on my left side and I was completely deaf. And it took me a long time to get to where I am now. So in the beginning, there was a lot of speech therapy that I went twice a week. And it was very, very, very beginners. And it was like learning how to listen to one syllable words, then two, then three. To see if you can recognize how many syllables you're hearing, and then just gradually increase. And I did that for a year and a half. But then I got my second implant done after I lost my hearing, and I basically had to go and do that all over again because I was completely deaf and I just lost my hearing.
Now, when you do oral rehabilitation for the second implant, you take the other one off and focus on the newer one?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
okay.
focus on one side, because when I did the left side, I had to take out my hearing aid.
Yeah.
And then focus on that.
Right.
So that it'll be the same thing for you. So if you decide to get your second implant, like you were saying, you never heard out of that 1 year, you'll be taking off your implant side and focus on that one side and work on that to better up on that.
When I retire.
And my son recently had his second ear implanted after 30 years of not hearing with it, and everything you're describing is what he's going through. And those of you who know Matthew Wolf, Ruth and Steve Wolf's son, just had a second implant this week as well. Arlene? Arlene, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that because I also, when I went bilateral, it was after 25 years of an ear that had not had sound, although I'm a late deafened adult, so I did grow up with sound there. And it was kind of what you're describing. It's in my book, documented in my second book, that the brain really rules, okay? And it can do things that defies logic. So I was hearing music with both ears on, like after 3 days, and hearing wonderful music through both ears. When I took the other ear off and only the new ear sounded like crap, okay? And I'm saying, what is going on here? Well, the brain can do things with two ears because it has all those connections that rule. And so throw out all the rules and just try it all. So do each one separately, do them together, listen to this, listen to that, and just relax, okay? You just, it's not going to happen in the first 2 weeks or 3 months or whatever. You're in this for the long term. So just relax and let it happen. And so while you're talking about what was good to practice, before the pandemic, my favorite activity has been going to the Metropolitan Opera being broadcast live in the movie theaters. All right, and opera, I could do music. I mean, I could. I mean, some people can't, or they require practice and everything. Fortunately, I could. However, after 6 hours of Wagner, the music sounded better at the end of those 6 hours than it did in the beginning. I swear, I'm not being funny, because it is a very natural way to get that practice in. And of course, it has the subtitles on the screen, and it's very visual. And so even if the music is not fabulous for you, you can get through it, even if that's not the case, that you can still enjoy this. And the longer you're with it, your brain starts to get it. So that's just, if you understand what I'm trying to tell you all this time, do what really you like to do anyway, because that's what will be sustainable.
Thanks, Arlene. Mike in Houston, you have your hand up? Or was that your old hand signal? Mike? You.
I need to take my hand signal down. I didn't intend it. Apologize for that.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if no one else has any questions, again, I'd like to thank Michelle for joining us this evening, as well as everyone on the line. As always, we invite you to stay with us if you'd like to socialize and share your own experiences with hearing loss and anything else that's on your mind. Please don't forget to unmute your microphones, identify yourself, and speak only one at a time. And finally, if you like what you heard today, please invite your friends, relatives, and others with hearing loss to join our next chapter meeting, which will be February 7th. Details can be found in our announcement flyers, our announcements we send out to chapter leaders around the country, or on our chapter website, which is HLAAWestchester.org. You can also email us at HLAAWestchester@gmail.com. So again, please stay with us if you'd like. And our next meeting is Monday night, February 7th.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to hear from all of you and get to talk with all of you.
Our pleasure, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arlene. Thank you, Arlene, for sharing that. But it took me 10 years with my one implant to get to a place where I'm comfortable, even hearing without reading lips. Without reading lips or captioning. That's why I'm worrying about the second one, because it took so long, because I was born deaf. I wasn't late deaf. Yeah.
I feel like that just to remember that no two implants are the same experience. So it's almost, you can't predict what this, if the second one will be just like the first. That's the thing. I know.
Yeah.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, again, we thank you. Have a great evening. Stay warm, and we'll see you again soon. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.